I received an email back in the fall regarding the Oliver Hazard Perry project, which is going on in Rhode Island. And it is an exciting project where Rhode Island is building a tall ship, and it will be an educational platform. And having worked with Authentic Learning Experience, previously I had been the director of an alternative high school, I immediately saw the potential of this ship for working with at-risk kids in Rhode Island. And one of my major focus is dropout prevention. I knew this educational platform had many uses, but I was looking at the character building and the team building capability of this ship and the impact on education. So I jumped, to excuse the pun, I jumped on board to this project early on, knowing that, one, the draw for Salve, Regina for the ocean, and people that come to Rhode Island, often I hear they come because of the ocean and sailing. I just thought that if the opportunity presents itself, that we can really capitalize on this jewel that will be kept in Rhode Island and the potential for the university and for the students I serve. So then, as emails go back and forth, probably the beginning of June, I received an email from the educational director who has recently been hired by the Oliver Hazard Perry. She said, we need another educator. And I said, look no further. I jumped in, like I immediately emailed and said, I would love to be that person. And she said, I would love you to be that person. And within a week, I met with 5 other educators that had applied and were selected. And I eventually got accepted as the representative, that 6th member of the team. We met at Oliver Hazard Perry's home over near the courthouse, and were given our caps and said, you'll set sail next week. We were given a cruise manual, said please study the crew manual and be ready to sail. You need to get to Philadelphia by the 30th of June with departure on the Gazela the next day. And that's how it all started. So here's this opportunity to go aboard a ship and really test out, could I walk the talk? You know, for years I've been inspiring other people. Put me in a situation and see if I can rise to the occasion. We're so often in a position where we're teaching and become known as the experts. Well, put me in a situation where I'm no longer the expert. I'm the novice. I'm the person who knows nothing. And what does it take for me to learn? And given that I teach learning theories, I thought, what a situation. I knew nothing about sailing other than what I acquired in a crew manual given to me a week before we set sail. But it was all book knowledge. It had no authentic meaning to me. It was just words on a paper. We were held over a day in Philadelphia, record temperatures, a hot spell, but it was exciting. We learned where we were sleeping. It was really a great opportunity to do 2 things. One, we were able to visit a maritime museum in the Philadelphia harbor, and there I saw for the first time the importance of Oliver Hazard Perry, not the ship, the human being, and the role he played in the War of 1812. So I spent a day for 2 reasons. 1, I was fascinated by the information, and 2, the museum was beautifully air-conditioned. And the other piece next to it is they had a working part of the museum which has partnerships with alternative high schools, where they have brought students in for shipbuilding and also looking at merchant marines as a possible career path. So there were 2 pieces. 1, learning a great deal about naval history and the role that ships and shipbuilding played in the economy and the history of economics for the United States was developing a real camaraderie with the team, that just dining together, communicating, getting to know my teammates, getting to know my educator crew, and slowly getting to know the crew, the professional and volunteer crew of the Gazela. But most important, spending time with the group of educators and bonding and learning who brought what talents and who came with experience. Two of us came with no experience. Learning the team and learning what they could bring to the whole project. And then we were ready to set sail. The Gazela is a 3-masted, 177-foot barkentine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was built in Portugal and retired in the 60s. It was used for cod fishing. She was purchased by a philanthropist in Philadelphia and brought to Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia Preservation Guild took on the task of restoring her. They completely replaced the deck, and major components have been replaced. But interesting enough, it's a wooden hull. And the reason it has survived is because part of the ballast when they came over from Portugal were tons of salt. And the salt has seeped into the wood. In fact, when you go below, you'll still see the salt stains on the wood. And the salt has served to preserve the wooden hull. And much has been replaced and they've upgraded, but I thought it was fascinating that the hull is intact because of the salt. Life changed on July 1st. I was on the sea and a member of a working crew, and that meant I was incorporated into the crew as if I had experience, and if I didn't have it, I needed to learn very quickly. The muster was an opportunity where before we had a muster when we came on, and if anyone's ever been on a cruise, there's always a cruise muster that says if there is a situation, you need to know how to respond. But on the ship, the muster took on a different dimension. One, there was a muster for the educators, where we were brought on board and brought onto the philosophy. This is with the first mate. And he had some wonderful literature. He had one particular book called The Tuning of the Rig, and about a college professor who had a similar experience. I've already ordered the book and I can't wait to read it. But he read excerpts about a week on a tall ship does not teach you to sail, nor did I think the 5 weeks or even 6 months that the author of this book wrote about, but it teaches you how to work as a team. And the muster is a time where the team sets its short-term and long-term goals. So you learn the specific, the fine-tuning of your particular job during that watch. So that's the beginning, but then at the end, the muster is equally important. It's able to say, okay, during these 4 hours, what went well and what can we improve upon? And one of the things that happened during a muster, they don't dwell. If you need a correction, the correction happens. 4 inches of water in the sink, I saw a half a sink full of water. Be advised, that can't happen again. No one tried to defend. Well, I didn't know in a case like that. No one told me that, and in that case, I filled the sink with. But it was superfluous. I didn't need to argue. I just needed to know I made a mistake and what I needed to do to correct that. Part of learning is to provide support, encouragement, but also warm and cool feedback. So the muster serve that purpose of keeping us on course. There were 3 officers on board, Captain Richard Bailey, Patrick, the first mate, and Jessica, the second mate. And the officers are responsible for making sure that the people on board the ship respect the culture of the ship, and ship comes first. I think there was a concern that we had an agenda coming from Rhode Island. We were going to accomplish certain tasks. We had our notebooks, we had our mission to bring back to the Oliver Hazard Perry the experience. They needed to let us know that from the time we set foot on the Gazela, we needed to pay attention to the needs of the Gazela. And it was communicated very directly, that if we thought we were going to sit with a book, because people talked about journal writing, and sit and take time and read when they needed hands on deck, that there is a culture on the ship and a need to recognize that on a ship there's a philosophy: ship first, shipmate second, and self third, because you need to get your mindset that you are on the ship and your first allegiance is to the needs of the ship. So it was a great learning experience to see where the ship fits in, where the shipmates are second, and if all organizations operated where everyone looked at what's the common mission and reassessed where they fit in, I think organizations and institutions could achieve great things. But so often, people need to put themselves first, and sometimes very much at the cost of the team and at the cost of the mission of the institution. You never forget when you've been on a team that has that philosophy, because you achieve greatness and you never forget that working relationship. And once you've had it, you're always seeking it. And when I had it on the ship, it reminded me of all the great teams I've been on. You knew immediately more experienced people when they would say all hands to the commands were given out. They knew exactly what it meant. I did not. I had no clue what the clue rope meant or the lines meant, because I was in their environment. You didn't say you were going to the bathroom. You said the head. You didn't say I'm going to the kitchen. You said the galley. And clearly the fact that every time you provided the wrong word or said the wrong word, they would correct you. It was very clear, very directly and subtly, you're in a different environment and you need to respect the language of this environment. And they didn't do it in a condescending way, they just reinforced. I would say I'm going downstairs to get, they'd say below. So I had the constant reinforcement that helped me quickly learn the language, the bow, the stern. What really made meaning to this, I felt like a second language learner. I did not know the ship language. I did not know when I was on lookout how to read the compass rose and the points on the rose. And I had to learn very quickly because others depended on me, and I just felt I did not want to be inadequate. So it was essential, but it was hard because there was so much to learn, and there were many times that my lack of comprehension and my lack of knowledge I felt was interfering with my ability to do the job. And I could only relate to the feelings of inadequacy students that come to the United States must feel, where here I'm motivated, I'm excited, but I couldn't perform to the best of my ability because I didn't understand the language. There were 6 rotations on your watch. Lookout 1, runner, lookout 2, utility, boat check, and helm. greatest challenge for me was on the helm because of the responsibility, knowing that at various points I was responsible for steering the ship. You always knew you had a backup, but you were at the helm, and the officer had to respond to your either management or mismanagement of the helm, and that was a solo performance, so that was incredibly stressful. Being at the helm requires making constant adjustments. Every job on the ship required that, but the helm was like a living job that you had to say, I need to take correction and I need to make adjustments. My greatest fear on the helm was that they would take me. The first night I did it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And I was so disappointed that I just couldn't get it. And my fear was that they wouldn't give me the opportunity to go back on, which they gave. The next time on my duty, I was back on the helm and I received more support. And I hope that in schools, we never bypass the needs of a student and do not provide that extra support that they can stay at the helm. One of the interesting aspects of being on the ship was the range of tasks, from something very sophisticated as going in the engine room and being able to read gauges, to some of the more menial tasks, and how every task you had to approach with a certain amount of due diligence, that nothing had less meaning on the ship, and everyone did everything. Everyone had the rotation. The most experienced sailor had to do the most menial task. But the same person also could do incredible feats, like going out on the yards. One of the men, it was a volunteer engineer, he said, you know, there's no phone calls. When you're out in the sea, you don't go in the yellow pages and say, okay, let me get an electrician over here. You have to be self-sufficient. And if there is a tangle and a line is caught way up on the mast, or you're going in, someone has to climb up and do it. And you have tools around you, either tools mechanical with safety harness, but more importantly, tools with people, that you will have the skill set to face the challenge. And there are some challenges that you have to be able to say, my first time on the helm, I need someone to take over temporarily. You also have to have your own sense of your capabilities, and that's part of what you're told on the ship. If you truly feel you cannot do something for the betterment of the ship, you need to let them know. If I felt I would be putting myself in harm's way, and I did with one particular climb, if I fell, the amount of time and energy to have to deal with an injured person, they do allow for self-doubt, and to be able to say reasonably, I just feel I cannot do a task. But they would also say, well, what do we need to do to get you prepared for the next time? And that's what I try to transfer it to educators. So I kept going back to, okay, I'm on a ship. We have a mission, but I'm also an educator. So what are my takeaways in terms of what I can pass on from my own learning to the teachers that I have in my charge in a teacher prep program, and also in my direct service with students? It was an incredibly powerful learning experience, and reminded me one of my favorite quotes: when faced with a difficult task, enter it with the mindset that it will be impossible to fail. And it also talks about that if you're going after Moby Dick, bring along the tartar sauce. And that was my mindset, that this is a difficult task, I will not fail, and I'll be ready to talk about my success when I get back. The last leg of the journey is where it's all culminating, and what I learned perhaps more than anything on this journey was the value and the importance of meaningful teamwork and feedback. The teamwork that takes place and the feedback that goes on among the team members, which is essential for any organization, to have good leadership, but to have a team that supports the mission of the leader. And I bonded and appreciated the mentoring that took place from day one. Sometimes we receive feedback that is kind feedback, and sometimes it has a sting to it. And the first day, actually while we were still in Philadelphia, during the tour, I asked a question that really didn't seem inappropriate at the time, but apparently the speaker wasn't completed with his introduction to the dory, and really snapped at me, like a real quick snap. And again, my experience working particularly with adolescents, it's like, okay, I'm on there, I have a lot to learn. Maybe this person, I didn't feel offended. It was like, boy, there's something going on here. Because I didn't take it personal and I just kept going and showing that I was an excited learner, the person saw that, okay, she's pretty good at taking feedback, and some really steely feedback, and it didn't derail me. And he kept that in his mind. And as we were departing the last day, he said, you have been a wonderful shipmate. I would not have been able to grow had it not been for the mentoring of people that knew much more than me, and their mindset and their investment in me. People didn't see teaching on the ship as a chore. They loved it. They basked in the privilege of being able to share with educators their knowledge. An effective teacher, one of the key characteristics is passion for their material, and that's what I saw with the instructors. We were privileged to have passionate teachers from the time we boarded in Philadelphia till the time we disembarked in Rhode Island. The last day was really bringing it all together, because we came into Newport and the connection to the Olive Hazard Perry is becoming more and more apparent. Part of the kindness of the Gazela and the crew was to host and have an opportunity for the benefactors and the supporters of the Olive Hazard Perry to come on board the ship, hear the experience of the 6 educators, those of us that experience the joys of the ship, and learn the potential that this ship had that can carry over. We will now, as they quote, become ambassadors for the Olive Hazard Perry. I saw the potential of using time on the ship clearly in terms of character development. That's a no-brainer. That is so obvious what we can help individuals develop in terms of leadership and teamwork. But also knowing it's an educational platform, but how classes could be held right on the ship. The science labs in the ship will be designed that scientific measurement and work can be done right there. Navigation brings in a host of mathematical concepts and use of mathematics. The history, needless to say, you could bring the history of tall ships and the role they played in democracy and fighting for democracy in this country. So the exciting part for me was to see the education occurring on the ship. So all of that was all coming into focus as we sailed by Salve, Regina, and Newport. It's now the end of the journey. What's the next journey? So as we came into Newport, there was a sadness, but there was also an excitement that now our work really begins. How can I play a key role from what I've learned in helping the Oliver Hazard Perry be all it can be to our area. And if the Oliver Hazard Perry can be an educational platform that will help my students learn what a learning community, a thriving learning community is all about, I hope to make that happen, not to mention all the other areas. So it was the end of a journey, but the excitement that a next journey is about to begin. But I will acknowledge a 2-day respite of a long hot shower and sleep where I could sleep for 8 hours. You knew you were laying in bed at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you could visualize other people assuming your duties. At the end of a journey, you're bone tired, but that's why they come into port. You restore, you play, and you refocus for the next journey. It was sad watching them leave.